I'm very flattered to be even thought of. There's a lot of people who probably could have been here. I don't want to look at the list, but I appreciate that I was on it. Thanks, Mike, for coming so far to say the things. I'm going to try to say some things for myself. I wrote them down, so I'm going to look down. And hopefully I say some things for you, because it's a unique opportunity to be up here to have this. So I'm going to kind of take this moment for myself. I'm going to kind of try to take it for you wherever you're at in the room. And I'm just going to start. These are my thoughts. And the first is that Muhammad Ali is not just a man's name. To my mind, it has become more than that. It has become an idea, a state of mind. It evokes awe and admiration. It has become legend. To those of us who were lucky enough to see him in action, both in and out of the ring, we know something that others don't and may not be able to fully appreciate, like trying to imagine Edmund Hillary climbing Mount Everest, Charles Lindbergh flying solo across the Atlantic. When our young president challenged the nation to ask not what our country could do for us, but what we could do for our country, Muhammad Ali did things that will live in the hearts and minds of people forever. He changed our lives, and not just because he was the greatest boxer who ever lived. He was. And not because he was beautiful, I guess. But because more than any other person in sports history, he represented to me the effect that a champion can have on the world when they leave their sport. My first memory of Muhammad Ali came from my father. I was listening to him talk to another man about a boxing match that was going to happen that night. Even though I was only 8 years old, I could tell from his voice that he did not think much of you. He did not think much of your chances. Words like arrogant, lack of respect, hadn't paid your dues. I even think I heard him say he ain't no Joe Louis. I didn't know who Joe Louis was either. I did not know who Joe Louis was either, but I could tell that my dad was sure that some guy named Sonny Liston was going to fix everything. So together, in the dark, my father and I listened to the radio. I remember sitting on his lap. Two profound things happened that night. The first was, you did shake up the world, my friend, and it would never be the same. The second was that I realized my dad, my own hero, could be absolutely wrong about something he was absolutely sure of. My dad was mad. He thought Liston was a bum and that he must have given up. I was secretly glad, and I agreed with you that you probably were the greatest. I wanted to know more about you, bad manners and all. You were not an easy person to root for in my house. I kept thinking, why couldn't you be more quiet? Why couldn't you seem to have just a little more humility and victory? Even I could see their point. So I decided that I would try to be humble for you. And just when we were both starting to make a little progress, you in the world and me with my pop, you went and changed your name. You changed your religion. And you refused to fight in a war in Vietnam with a people with whom you had no quarrel. The 60s was a confusing time, and no one was more confusing to white America than you. Those who first doubted your boxing abilities and were proved to be wrong switched their attack. Now they questioned your patriotism, your courage, your unwillingness to fight outside the ring. It was a predictable response. It was convenient, and it was lazy, an uninformed view of your dramatic personal stance. And overnight, you became public enemy number one. Looking at you tonight, I'm sure you feel the love in the room. But if we were to put your life in reverse, we would see how you suffered, and we would see that you were all alone, armed only with the conviction of your faith. You took it from all sides. It was unfair. If it was a fight, somebody would have stopped it. Somebody should have. Somebody should have thrown the flag for piling on. And just like the greatest screen heroes, you never blamed or explained. You never said a word. With everything on the line, your reputation, the best years of your boxing life, your own personal freedom, you stood dead center in the middle of the ring and refused to turn your back on your principles and your religion. You broke with the conventional wisdom of the time, and you were right. Everybody was wrong about Vietnam. You never surrendered in the ring, and you never surrendered outside it. Your title was taken away from you. You were robbed. But in doing so, you won the greatest battle of all. You won the love of the people. Women, men, poor people, rich people, white people, black people, children. You became the most famous person in the world putting on a show. I can remember you quickly combing your hair, waiting for a decision. What were you doing? I mean, who does that? Who does that in such a moment? You were a sly one, Muhammad, and we now know that you were fixing yourself up to play a greater role than just the boxer we all saw. You became the most famous person in the world pretending to be a fighter when you were really a man of peace. When you came back to us, you were almost the same. The old battle lines were redrawn, but something was different. A shift was occurring in the country, and now when you went down, we ached. Those who thought they wanted it most, unexplainably now found themselves standing with the rest of us, cheering, willing you to get up. A shift was occurring in the country. A shift was occurring because you never did. And suddenly we knew that a man like you was once in a lifetime. Thank you for taking us on your extraordinary journey. For the fleeting moments when we all thought we could float like a butterfly. Thank you for those amazing nights under the lights when you stung like a bee. Without bitterness, you let us mere mortals be great with you. You allowed us to be courageous. You allowed us to do the impossible. When you fought Joe Frazier in the Thrilla in Manila, we couldn't have gotten up off our chair in our corner, but you did. Somehow you got up when we couldn't. And when George Foreman was staggered in Africa, it seemed like the impossible was happening. We were afraid he would hurt you and humiliate you that night. We didn't want to see you beaten and on your knees. We didn't expect you to win because we couldn't have. But you did. You covered up and you took a beating. You took a beating until there was no fight left in a man who had come to kill you. And when he fell down, it was like a mighty redwood had been toppled. It was like the Titanic going down. It was Goliath lying dead in a field and David standing over him, a man of faith. A man who believed in himself and helped us believe in ourselves. It's been said that only another man can make another man cry. I don't know many who didn't the night you stood at the top of Barcelona's Olympic Stadium. The world held its breath as you stood alone, unaided, holding a torch that you had been carrying for us all these years. You were the perfect man for that perfect moment. I didn't weep that night because you were no longer 30 years old and in your prime, or because your hands would not stop trembling. I wept because that night, two profound things happened again. Without saying a word, standing in silent dignity, you shook up the world. My father and I were both watching again. The only difference, this time I was too big for his knee. And he didn't speak for the longest time. And I didn't think to break the silence of that moment. Finally, he turned to me and he quietly said, "He is the greatest, son." My life had come a full circle that wondrous night with you, me, and my dad. It was an example to all of us that if we reach for the stars, we might someday become one. Wallace Stegner wrote a great novel of the Old West, The Angle of Repose. When asked what the title meant, he said, It is the way that you are held in the hearts of those who knew you while you were alive. So I offer up again that Muhammad Ali is not just a man's name. It's a prayer. It's a whisper, a chant, a rallying cry, a trumpet call. It's a challenge to be the best we can be. Muhammad Ali is not just a man's name. It's a magical place where men can triumph and be celebrated. And to that point, I wonder how many of us remember the movie Spartacus, when the Romans are asking the rebel slaves, which among them is Spartacus? And if he will step forward, the rest will be spared. And so to save his men, he stands up and he says that he is Spartacus. And then one by one, each of his men stands up and say that he is Spartacus. Spartacus is not a man's name anymore either. It has become a battle cry to free men everywhere. So tonight, I want to raise my glass and I ask you to do the same. To the first and greatest Muhammad Ali. It is the name of all good men everywhere who are fighting the good fight. Your fight has always been to make the world a better place, and you have won. We thank you for showing us how to be a warrior, and we thank you for showing us how to be a peaceful warrior. In our best moments, we are all Muhammad Ali.